Her family are still waiting for police to formally identify a body found in the River Wire yesterday morning. The Home Secretary says she has serious concerns about the release of personal information about Nicola Bulley into the public domain. Suella Braverman confirmed that she wasn't wholly satisfied with the details released by Lancashire Police.
I did have concerns earlier in the week about some of the elements relating to the release of personal information of Nicola Bulley into the public domain. I raised those concerns with the Chief Constable. I wasn't wholly satisfied, I have to say, with some of the responses I got, but it is a matter for the police themselves. There are some investigations ongoing looking into how the investigation's been handled, and we must let that carry out its own process. But we must just let the investigation conclude, and then we will see what the investigations and the inquiries come back with.
Well, let's take a look at how this case evolved over the last 3 weeks. On the 27th of January, Nicola Bulley disappeared at some point between 9:10 and 9:33 and was reported missing to police an hour and a half later. The next day, police drones, helicopters and dogs began the search. Then Lancashire Police said for the first time they did not believe her disappearance was suspicious. A week after she disappeared, police announced they were working on the theory that Nicola had entered the river. A team of underwater diving specialists searched the River Wire but failed to uncover new evidence. After intense public interest, police issued an order in St Michael's to prevent people from conducting their own searches. On February the 15th, there was the revelation that Nicola Bulley had specific vulnerabilities. And on the same day, the police said she struggled with alcohol issues and symptoms of menopause. A body was found yesterday about a mile from where Ms Bulley was last seen, walking her dog beside the River Wire. Lancashire Police said the body is yet to be formally identified. Well, our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, joins me now. And Greg, this dreadful wait just going on for her family.
Yeah, it is, and that formal process of identification is ongoing. We'd expect an update from the police at some point with the result of that, of course, for all of us to know, but primarily for Nicola Bulley's family to know after waiting 24 days for news of what happened to her. It was yesterday morning, as you say, that some people out walking spotted something in the river and alerted the police, and underwater search teams, specialist officers were brought in about a mile up the river, as you say, from where Nicola Bulley is thought to have disappeared on January the 27th. The police saying at the moment that death of that body they recovered is unexplained. They obviously don't have an identification that early, they didn't, but they told Nicola's family because of what has happened and said their thoughts are with them. We know from her partner telling Sky News that apart from agony that the family was going through, he had no words really to describe the emotions right now. And they will be awaiting that update from the police. And of course, questions for the police as well. You heard from the Home Secretary there about those issues that have been going on in the investigation. Questions about whether this area of the river was searched thoroughly enough. They've said that these searches in water are complex and things change and move, but there will be questions about the extent of those searches in that area over the last 24 days. But those perhaps for another day. At the moment, talking to people in this village, and you still see the posters up all around this village, the missing posters for Nicola Bulley. Just a real sadness that this has ended, it appears, in the way that everyone had feared.
Desperately sad entirely, Greg. Thank you very much. Well, joining me now is Nazir Afzal, former chief prosecutor. Very good to talk to you today. Greg was just mentioning there questions about how it does take 24 days to find a body less than a mile from where it disappeared. Do you think the police have questions to answer?
First and foremost, it's a family tragedy, and so my thoughts are with those who loved her and also her friends. We don't know for sure, but obviously we can make an assumption based on what we know about the situation. I'm not an underwater search expert, and I don't claim to be. And I imagine there will be people who are better placed than I am to be able to comment on that. But they did, it appears, explore most, if not all, of that area, and nothing appeared to have been found on previous searches. And that is a question that needs to be asked as to whether or not those searches were conducted appropriately and properly, and whether or not there are consequences that flow from that, and also whether there's any learning for future searches of such a nature. I think there are so many issues in this particular investigation that will need consideration. As you know, Lancashire Police have submitted themselves to the Independent Office for Police Conduct for an inquiry to take place. I would urge the IOPC to do something they haven't done before, and that's to expedite this inquiry. Public confidence has been shaken, I think, by the last 3 weeks or so, and the IOPC should be looking at what the investigation did or didn't do, when it did it and when it didn't do it, and what other issues that might arise from that, and report back to all of us within days, not weeks or months. I think that's one thing we could do differently. Additionally, I am seriously concerned about the amateur sleuths, Jane. They have been devastating in what they've been putting out there. There's been conspiracy theories. There are today conspiracy theories which can only do one thing: that's damage the family and hurt the family, who are having to cope with the loss of a mother or a wife and a family member. And I would like to think we can perhaps learn from how this has been addressed. You read in that summary a moment ago that the dispersal order for the public took 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks before the police stopped people from going up and down the river and potentially damaging evidence that might have been out there or whatever. So, that's an issue, again, that police needs to address. But I think there's a significant case now for us looking at what social media, in particular, is able to say about this. I mean, if I was anybody that was accused by somebody on social media in relation to this matter, I'd be considering defamation proceedings. But more than that, I think people's confidence has been damaged. I think people have been given all sorts of expectations which will never be met. And I personally am very much in favour of the government now looking at legislation here. I've said it before, I'll say it again. There ought to be an offence of obstructing a police investigation through the dissemination of information that you know to be false. There is tons of false information out there which has been besmirching members of Nicola Bulley's family, besmirching members of the police and others, which are, all they've done, sadly, is made a bad situation worse, a tragic situation worse. And I really do think that we need a really strong conversation about what people are allowed to say or put out there without consequences.
Seems a lot of people have got an awful lot of time on their hands, doesn't it? What about the involvement of a non-police search team, the dive team that went in there, who then turned around and said she's categorically not in the river? Do you think there are questions about why they were allowed to do that?
Well, there's a broader issue about whether the police are resourced to have their own teams, and it would appear that they invited these people in or allowed them to do what they do. They appear to be experts. I don't know them. I don't know what they're capable of doing. Clearly, they've got some questions to ask about what they did or didn't do. But I think the broader case here is, Jane, that the police should have access to its own expertise, which is readily available and able to do its job rather than having to outsource it, even if they didn't charge. I understand they didn't charge, but you're outsourcing to people who don't have your knowledge and your experience as a police investigator. And I think that's an issue which I think they need to address.
And just finally touching on the release of personal information, the Home Secretary, we heard just a short time ago saying on camera that she really had concerns about that. Again, do you think that's something that the police need to learn lessons about?
I said it the moment it happened, totally inappropriate. The only reason you should release information is to protect the public or to help you identify and find the person that's missing. That information did neither, and it was inappropriate. I can go further than the Home Secretary. I think whoever did that needs to justify it publicly, and if they can't, there should be consequences. It did nothing to help us find Nicola Bulley.
Do you think? Do you think someone should lose their job over this? You say
it's certainly. I mean, it's something that needs to be considered. To my mind, it's a disciplinary matter, and ought to be addressed in the disciplinary misconduct regulations they have. But there was no reason for it. I can't think of any justification for that information to come out. It did not, in any way, help us identify where Nicola Bulley was.
Okay, Nazir Afzal, former Chief Prosecutor. Very good to talk to you. Thank you very much. Just before we go, let's quickly tell you about another story this lunchtime. Scotland's Finance Secretary, Katie Forbes, has announced today that